All right, everybody. Well, we are back for a special Labor Day edition of the Monday Rewind for Tri-State Football. As always, myself, Daniel Kuhn, and my co-presenter, co-host Jacob Berkemeier are here to talk about all the action from this past weekend and high school football around the Tri-State. And we had some interesting results, Jacob. I must say that we're going to talk about here tonight, and some surprising, some not surprising. One that was actually really surprising.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting week too. What's your take on everything that happened over the weekend?
I mean, I think you definitely saw some of the teams from last year struggle a little bit they're
Mhm.
pretty good. And I was kind of looking into the ECC and then GCL some. Those were obviously two big conferences last year that had a lot of good schools. And I mean, I'm sure we're talking about a couple of those games, and I know
Mhm.
I'm starting off with the one in the ECC that surprised me the most. So I don't know if we would like to roll into that one real
Yes,
quick.
roll right into it, man. It's just a perfect
Yeah,
segue.
so Kings, man. So I know we were texting each other kind of Friday night, and you're like, Kings might upset Winton Woods here.
Yeah.
And Winton Woods last year was top five, top 10 in our tri-state rankings pretty much throughout the whole year. The Anderson game, Anderson Winton Woods, that was kind of the battle for the ECC last year. And so you can see some of these highlights here. Um, Starting off with a punt, that's always fun.
That's a
Oh, a
muff punt.
muff punt.
So
Yeah, so
mistake.
that's a huge momentum shift right there, um, which probably led. Oh, I don't. I guess they're not showing it. Um,
Some not so great camera work, but I think we get the
but
idea.
oh, a little
Yeah,
cutback,
yeah.
roll in for the touchdown too. That was a great play there. That looks like that was Jakai DuBois with 48-yard pass from Bryshon Brown there. Um, so not a lot of highlights for Kings getting the win there. But I do want to touch on Grant Nuri, Kings starting quarterback. This is his third season in a row starting, so he's a senior. He's been starting since a sophomore. Um, Stat line doesn't necessarily pop off at you, but it was a 16-14 win for Kings, and he went 8 for 15, 107 for a touchdown, had 18 carries, 57 yards. And then Jackson Bake was able to get the other touchdown for Kings. And then they also hit a field goal as well. So missed an extra point and then hit the field goal. But so kind of the scoring breakdown, which is crazy, was Kings scored in the first quarter, 7-0. Then Winton Woods answered 7-7. Then Andrew Lyman, who's also been starting for a couple of years for Kings, caught a touchdown pass. It was 13-7.
That name
Then
sounds
that
familiar.
Lyman,
Yes.
yeah, he played last year for Kings. I don't know if you covered any of their games, but he's a solid player, wide receiver. Got some size outside there for them. And so the highlight you guys saw with Jakai DuBois kind of cutting it back and getting tackled into the end zone for that long touchdown. So that was the last score that Winton Woods had, and that was made it 14-13. And then they just Kings kicked a like 30-yard field goal basically towards
Hmm.
the end of the half, and then second half no scores. So really defensive battle. And Bryshon Brown for Winton Woods, he was their QB last year. He's pretty solid, and had a good game, 343 yards and two touchdowns. But I mean, man, that Kings run defense, I think that was the X factor in this game because they were able to get this lead, and it's not a big one. You're only up 2 points for the whole second half.
Hmm.
Offense isn't really doing a ton either, but they held Winton Woods to 12 rushes for 17 yards and a 1.4 yard average, which is crazy when you think of some of the running backs in the past that have come out of Winton Woods, like Mayan Williams. I know they've had other ones too, but I mean, Mayan was at Ohio State. So I've always thought of Winton Woods kind of being a little bit more run heavy and always having a good run game. And I think just seeing that where, Kings was able to kind of shut down that part of the game where they were forced to throw the ball. Wynton Woods was forced to throw the ball 43 times. And Johnny or Travis had a great game, 9 receptions for 165 yards and a touchdown. And then Du Bois had that nice, long touchdown there. But, other than that, it's like stats aren't really popping out on offense too much. But you saw the muff punt. I'm sure that was a huge momentum shift and
Yes,
swing
for
for
sure.
Kings to kind of get that. Um, and yeah, I mean, stat wise, there's nothing too crazy on there. But I mean, just a huge win for Kings to put you kind of in contention for that top spot. I mean, you got to play Anderson at some point, and same with Winton Woods. You wonder how they'll bounce back after that. But I think Kings having some guys like Grant Nuri, who's been there, it's the third year starting. I mean, that definitely makes a difference where you're calm and collected. They didn't turn the ball over, and ultimately, I think that's what won them the game. So, you have any thoughts on that?
I think you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned that how the Knights defense kind of really was able to keep the Winton Woods offense in check, at least from a running perspective. I mean, you're absolutely right. Winton Woods has always had their biggest success offensively through their running game, and I think if you can
Mm-hmm.
stifle that effectively, you can keep yourself in the game because one of the things Winton Woods does, or at least has done in the past, is their calling card is they get a lead on you and they just do not stop. Right? They just
Yeah.
it's kind of like a boat race, right? I mean, they're up two
Mm,
scores, the game's pretty much over at that point because no matter how
yeah.
fast you score, they're going to score just as quickly back. And so kind
Mm-hmm.
of taking away their tempo, and causing them to maybe play a little bit of like dink and dunk passing style football or just even they just couldn't get anything going on the run. I don't know if Winton was passed more than normal or not, but my point still
Yeah.
stands. If you can slow down their offense, then you can keep yourself in the game, and that seems like what Kings did effectively. And then of course, the muff punt definitely didn't hurt.
Yeah.
Whenever
So
you
I'm
get a
looking
big
at
momentum.
I'm looking at Winton Woods week one stats. So Bryshon Brown only threw the ball 24 times in their week one win over Springfield.
Hmm.
Then you go to week two, he's throwing the ball 42 times.
Right. Yeah.
So, and that's kind of what we were talking about is just,
Hmm.
you get a lead, you can kind of lean on the run the clock out some.
Put them in
And
a
this
position
week,
where they have to make play catch up. Right. It's
mm-hmm,
that's what it boils
absolutely.
down to.
Um, But yeah, I wanted to touch on that game for sure. And then are we swinging it back to you for this next game?
Yeah, we're gonna swing it to me. We're gonna keep it in Ohio, but we're gonna swing over. Well, I guess actually, technically, I guess we're keeping it on both sides of the river. It's Elder and
Yeah, yeah.
Covington Catholic. Kind of a big interstate or external state game. I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
not very often do two of the bigger private school powerhouses from both Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky come together. But we got it this weekend at the pit with Elder and Covington Catholic, and after Covington Catholic last week, kind of had a disappointing start to the season with that loss to Ryle. Felt like
Mm-hmm.
they may be getting off on the wrong foot, and listen, they're 0-2. Obviously reading the headline, they did not beat Elder, but if you go look at the stats and kind of understand how this game actually played out, Covington Catholic was absolutely in this game the whole night. I mean, it was only a 28-20 final score, which I think is the exact same score as it was last week against Ryle, but a totally different ball game.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing that really kind of made the distinction between these two teams is that Elder simply just had more success running the football.
Yeah.
Um, the only difference, too, I guess the second difference is Elder was able to convert in the red zone twice, or sorry, four times, whereas Covington Catholic only went 2 for 4. Now
Yeah.
Covington Catholic did get two field goals, but there's your 7 point or 6 points, right? At least
Mm-hmm.
that's keeping you from being within within one score of this
Yeah.
game. Well, they were one score, but you get what I'm saying. But within
Yeah. No,
three,
I'm picking up
yeah,
what you're putting down.
yeah, and you look at the stats. Elder was pretty consistently dominant in the trenches, 22 first downs compared to Covington Catholic's 12. Elder had about 100 more yards, 401 total yards to the Cardinals 309. You look at the passing completions, only 16 for Elder, 11 for Covington Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives you an idea of how much of a running game this was.
Yeah.
Rushing attempts for both teams. Elder had 31, Covington Catholic had 29.
Yeah.
So you're looking at Caden Estep, the Elder quarterback, Cash Harney, Covington Catholic's quarterback, and then you've got Tommy Becker from Elder and Cash Harney, or sorry, Dylan Geyser from Covington Catholic. It actually was a interesting kind of way how it played out. Both Cash Harney and Caden Estep, the two starting quarterbacks, led their teams in rushing yards.
Mm-hmm.
So it was they were led heavily on the quarterback rush. It inevitably ended up being Caden Estep who led his team to victory. If
Yeah.
you look at the box score, one of the big things that happened was I think later in the third quarter, Cash Harney had two interceptions against Ryle that were a little bit of a momentum killer. He had a kind of a similar one again this weekend against Elder. Threw an interception. Elders, excuse me, Elders. Oh my gosh, it was just right in front of me. Elders Mason Chumbley had an interception in the second half that kind of turned the game a little bit more towards Elders' favor, and the Panthers were able to kind of just use Tommy Becker and Caden Estep's legs to churn out the clock. They had a two-score lead. Covington Catholic came back late again. They are. I will say this about Covington Catholic, and it doesn't matter how many scores are down late in the game. They're going to find a way to put together a really solid offensive drive.
Yeah.
Kept it within one score off of a 55-yard touchdown pass from Harney to senior defensive back slash slot receiver Logan Sanning. So they kept it close. But one of the things that I think is becoming apparent for Cov Cath is they have struggled to kind of play consistently aggressive in the trenches. I think they are very much a running heavy offense. Both Cash Harney and their running back Dylan
Dylan
Geyser
Geyser. Yeah.
are pretty darn good at running the football, and they've heavily utilized them here in the first 2 weeks of the season. And it just feels like, and granted, now listen, you're playing Jacob Savage and then the Elder Panthers weeks 1 and 2 back to back. That's a tall
Mm-hmm.
ask for the defense. But I
Yeah.
think if Covington Catholics to get their season on track, they really need to establish some sort of dominance on the interior part of the offensive line, and in the same way around on the defensive line. And then in terms of Elder, off to a great start this year. They played two out-of-state schools, if you consider CovCath
Yeah.
out of state, but they played two out-of-state schools to start the year, both at home on Friday night, and they've gotten it done twice. So
Yeah.
off to a good start this year for the Panthers. I think nope, there's only one team in the GCL South with a loss, and we're going to get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But all four teams really in the GCL South off to great starts this season.
For
And I
sure.
think that's like, do you have any thoughts or comments on the CovCath Elder game there,
Yeah,
Jacob?
I do. Just want to kind of highlight Brody Turner, Elder's linebacker. He's a sophomore, had 13 tackles in that game. So what we had kind of talked about last year a lot with Elder was just like if the offense can kind of catch up to how the defense had played last year, they'll be, pretty good and tough to beat this year. And I think they've established something in the first couple of weeks with Tommy Becker, their running back, and Caden Estep as their quarterback. It's, you know, they can, they're going to be able to run the football. And with a good defense that they have, like Derek Uran's going to, I think, University of Virginia. Not sure about everyone else, but I mean, Chumley got that pick and he had some tackles as well. So I just think them being able to play complementary football with being able to run the ball, Estep also went 16 for 19. Now he only threw for 219 yards and no touchdowns, but the fact that you have that high of a completion percentage, no
Mm-hmm.
turnovers, playing turnover free football, moving the chains, and getting stops on defense, it's like those are three things that make it really hard to beat you. And if you got two threats in that backfield, I think it's tough, and it just sets up for a really fun GCL this year because you have Moeller with their very high powered explosive offense, and then St. X's defense is really really good too. Curious when we get to like an Elder St. X game, is the final score going to be 7-6 or like
Right. Yeah.
but it makes for an exciting finish kind of to this conference and everything once we get down the road. But I think if you're an Elder Panther fan, you got to be happy with how they've started this year versus kind of how last year went.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a great start to the season for Elder, and I think on the other end of the spectrum, Cubcats, maybe didn't envision themselves starting out 0-2, but they did play two very good programs
That's
and
yeah, you schedule
only
tough
lost
early in
by
the
only
season.
lost by a combined score of 16, right? Two
Yeah,
8-point games. So hey, listen, nothing
and
but
we've talked about it last 2 weeks. Turnovers. You get the
mhm,
turnovers under control.
yeah.
They might come out with wins in those 2 games. So I think there's a lot that Cupcath like. It's nothing to get down on yourself about. You played two good
Mhm.
programs, and I have faith in them that they'll be
Yeah,
a
I
good
think they'll.
team by
I
the
think
end of
they're
this
going to
year.
be. I think they're going to be a player for sure in the Kentucky
Yeah,
State playoffs. Just
absolutely.
you schedule tough, you play tough, right? So
Hmm.
they're going to be definitely battle tested for the meat and bones of their schedule for sure.
For
All
sure.
right, I kind of mentioned it a little offhandedly a few minutes ago when we were talking about GCL South, but I'm going to kick it back to Jacob, and he's going to talk about I think probably the most surprising result so far this year, and it may be the most surprising result all year. Matt Moeller, I'll let you go, but I
Yeah.
don't know. I had never heard of Mount Carmel
So
before,
I had to
before this weekend.
do some research for this because half of Muller's schedule is teams that you've never heard of before that are outside of the state. Mount Carmel is the second ranked team in Illinois this
Okay,
year. So they played a really good program, and oddly enough, the game was like over kind of by like Athens. I forget exactly the
Ironton.
location it was
It's
played.
it's
Yeah,
it's in
Ironton.
Ironton. It's by Huntington, West
So
Virginia.
so yeah, that's where they played, which I felt was a little weird because it's like almost a 3 hour drive for Moeller,
Mhm.
and then for this team, Mount Carmel. I mean, they're coming from Illinois, so that's a really long drive for them.
Yeah.
Which is probably why they didn't want to go to overtime with Moeller. So this was just an absolute shootout, man. I mean,
Hmm.
43-42 is the final. I mean, Ponitowski, after not really having to do much week one with the defense playing super well, 19 for 30, 287, 5 touchdowns. Clean game from him. Didn't get a ton of help in the run game. They had 31 carries for 121 yards, but most of that yardage came from Ponitowski, 6 carries for 54. And Carson KO for Big Mo had a great game. 9 receptions, 191, and 3 touchdowns. And some people may remember his brother, RJ, who played and went to Wofford. Seems like Carson's going to end up having a really good senior season. He played some last year, slot guy and returner, but seems to be more of a focal point of this offense. And, but I mean, man, Emmett Dowling, Mount Carmel's quarterback, he went, bar for bar with Ponitowski. He went 382 and 4 touchdowns and 1 pick. And I mean, really, it literally came down to who had the ball last
Yeah.
because, it was 14-14 at the end of the first quarter. Then each team scored in the second quarter, make it 21-21. Third quarter, Moeller ends up going up 35-28. Next drive in the fourth quarter, Mount Carmel scores again to make it, 35-35. Well, then, with a minute 17 left, Carson KO catches a 30-yard touchdown pass. And then you got not even a 2 minute drill, but like a minute 15 drill. Mount Carmel is able to come down, score, and then they Dan Campbelled it, went for two, won the football game. And I mean, that's what you have to do to beat one of the best teams in the state of Ohio. I think it's, you can't play scared, and they didn't back down. And I mean, like I said, this is the number 2 ranked team in all of Illinois. So it's not like some random team that
Yeah.
Moeller is playing. They played a really good football team, and I
Yeah.
think this game will help prepare them down the road.
For sure.
You have to like what you see out of Ponitowski and KO that game. And I mean, the defense showed out in week one. I think that would maybe be the only thing that you would, and Caleb Willis for Moeller, he did get a pick six. So it's like it wasn't like the defense didn't make any plays. I think just that offense that they went up against was equally
to
as
go
good as Moeller,
toe for toe with them,
which,
right?
yeah. So, I
I
mean,
don't know if
it's a
Moeller's
very
used to that,
impressive
right?
win,
Yeah.
but, being able to throw and kind of create explosive plays like I think Mount Carmel was able to do, I think you're going to have to be able to do that against a team like Moeller because they're so explosive on offense. It's like no lead is going to be safe playing against them, and you can't get down by too much because their offense is too explosive. So I don't think it's something to look into and read into too much, but a great football game that unfortunately I don't think a lot of us could make it to because it was in Ironton, So it would have been a cool game to watch, but I think Moeller will bounce back fine and have a really good season still.
Yeah, I think, the biggest takeaway I have from this is two things. Number one, I now know who Mount Carmel from Illinois is. I won't forget who that is. So kudos to them for putting themselves on the map for me. It's not that I expected, I thought Moeller was playing some cupcake pushover from the middle of nowhere, Illinois, but it's like, you see it on the schedule, they're like, some other out of state school, like they're gonna take care of business, and we're gonna be talking about the St. X Moeller here in a couple of weeks, and then it's like you see the final score come through your phone on Saturday, you're like, really, what? They lost, and then like you said, I mean, you have, in order to beat, I think, Moeller, if you don't have the absolute just shutdown defense to clamp down Ponatowski and the rest of that offense, then you have to have the offense and go toe to toe with them. And I don't forgive me, I don't know Mount Carmel's mascot name, but we'll go with Mount Carmel. Say Mount Carmel. Mount Carmel had the offense to do that. And when you lose a game that's like that, like hey, whoever has the ball last is going to win this game. Sometimes it's just a flip of a coin, luck of the draw, right? I mean, yes, they did get the 2-point conversion to win it, and you had an opportunity to stop them there and could have came out on top. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think for Moeller, I think this is maybe one of the best things that could have happened for their team this year, because if you think back to the past few years, they've been going into the state playoffs undefeated, right?
Yeah.
Nobody can
Well, I
touch them.
think wasn't last year, didn't they lose one and it was to that team from West Virginia, or did they beat that team?
Oh, I'm not. I thought they were undefeated last year. I could be wrong.
No, they did. Okay, so it wasn't from West Virginia. I think they played it in West Virginia, but they did lose to Mallard Creek in
Okay.
overtime last year, 21-14. I don't know if
You're
you remember that
you're
or not.
jogging my memory a little bit there,
Yeah.
Jacob. I'm sitting here thinking to
So,
myself. Actually, I slightly remember talking about that on this show.
yeah.
Probably the exact same thing conversation we're having right now. So I
Yeah,
guess that's Moeller's
and
new
then they
calling
rattled
card.
off like 12 straight wins after that
Yeah,
before the
the
state
state
final
final.
game.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
but I do think that losing a tough game like that close early, it's early in the season, so it doesn't make or break your whole year, and it was a one score game. They had the ball last. They just got one extra play on us on offense. Then hey, you know what? Move on, roll into the GCL South season and the rest of their schedule, and I
yeah.
think they'll be just fine. All right. So, anything else on the Moeller, Illinois shoot? Mount Carmel. Stop
Yeah.
making it sound like they went up to Champaign, Illinois, and
They,
lost to
they,
the
they
Fighting
played the state
Illini
of
there.
Illinois,
Yeah.
yeah.
But no, Mount. I almost called it Mallard Creek. Mount Carmel. So
Yeah.
I'll kick off, or I'll roll it into myself. I'll keep it pretty short and sweet on this, because there's one name you need to know in order to understand why Highlands is off. The Bluebirds are off to they're flying high. They're flying high to start their 2025 season. And of course, I would be remiss if I was not talking about uh, one Tayden Lorenzen. Lorenzen mania has eclipsed Northern Kentucky football this year. He's off to a incredible start this year. Obviously, we kind of did a little bit of a quick cap, if you will, of the Highlands game last week, where they came out on top, and this week the big game was they're against Cooper, defending state runner-up Cooper. I think everybody that is tuned in to Northern Kentucky high school football, this was a big one, one you wanted to circle your calendar for, and Tayden had that big overtime touchdown last week to win the game against Douglas. Yeah, and this week, I've realized that I still have my I didn't maximize the screen here, folks. Hold on, sorry. Even in week two, sometimes we have a few.
It's
I'll
all
have a
good. The
few.
highlights didn't even start yet. You're good.
I have a few hiccups here and there, but Taylor Lorenzen has been phenomenal. I mean, let's just talk about his stat line this past week. So he threw the ball once, so he is technically a quarterback. Rio Littner is primarily Highland's starting quarterback. He went 17 for 25 for 180 yards, and he did have a touchdown completion. But obviously, the big one is Taylor Lorenzen.
You see that hurdle right there?
No, I didn't. I was reading the
Yeah, that was nice. He hurdled then stiff arm for a touchdown. Yeah.
Yeah, he's on something,
number
man.
22.
He had 19 rush attempts for 90 yards and 3 touchdowns on Friday night. Just an absolute, elite performance from the junior. You can see they almost line up, they almost run a wildcat system, for half of their offensive plays because they put him at quarterback. But we all know
how do you stop that.
That's a good question. That's like, hey, if you want to beat Highlands, look at the chain on that. Holy moly!
Yeah.
I was not expecting that. But how do you stop it? I mean, no one's been able to yet. But listen, he is absolutely on fire to start their season. I think that Highlands, they went into this year really, really excited about their chances. I know that I think last year Navy necessarily didn't end the way they wanted it to. They got pretty far in the state tournament and came up a little bit short, I believe, in the semis. I could be wrong, but it was pretty deep into December, and I think they came back this year with a vengeance. And Rhea Littmer, I know we're talking all about Taylor Lorenzen and how he's kind of just taken over the offense, and he's even kind of technically playing quarterback because he had one passing completion, and he was staking the snap like in a wildcat formation. But Rhea Littmer should not be overlooked either. He's a very good young quarterback. Obviously the senior kind of leader of that team, and shouldn't be overlooked either. But the Bluebirds are just I think they're the kind of the team this year in Northern Kentucky that no one really expected. And I think they're really putting their stamp on that now too, because Cooper was that team last year, right?
Yeah.
If you wanted to go anywhere in Kentucky last year, you had to get through Cooper. And Riles making a claim for that, kind of like king of the hill sort of position right now, but Highlands is right there with them. So it'll be exciting to see what happens the rest of the season. Number 22 for the Bluebirds, Mr. Lorenzen, is off to a great start to his junior year. They play Campbell County this weekend. And I think that will be a decent little matchup because I think Campbell County is off to a pretty good start this year as well. So a bounce back year for the Campbells. Any pointers?
I was just going to talk about Rio. What's Rio's last name? Littmer, you said?
Rio Littmer.
Yeah, so I think, having that balance where, even though it's you probably know that he, not Rio, but Lorenzen's going to be running the ball when he's in, having somebody that you're relying upon as a coaching staff, and he can make these throws and know how to kind of manage a game and stuff and get through it. I think that's equally as important as, the 3 touchdowns that he's scoring, Lorenzen's scoring, and it also allows for creativity as the year goes on.
Sure.
Right now they're only showing these packages, but maybe you start doing some funkier stuff and,
open different up that playbook a little bit.
Once you get later in the year, you don't want to show all your tricks early on. But I think, there's some ability to kind of do that and, use them together a little bit more. And I think both of them getting reps at that spot is going to end up just being better for them down the road. So
I also think too, for Highlands, from an offensive perspective, I think when you have a kind of dynamic duo of your senior leader who can really sling the ball, with his arm, and then you've got this, absolute kind of specimen, big. By no means is he a small kid. He's a beast for sure. Really physically imposing running back that can actually also throw the ball apparently too. But when you have that kind of like dynamic duo, you set yourself up for so much offensively because let's say you take Littmer and just kind of drive your way down the field using his arm. You get into the red zone, you just let Lorenzen do whatever the heck we just saw him do on
just
that.
bully his way. Yeah, I mean,
right. Like
he had 2 separate touchdown highlights where he hurdled a guy.
Yeah.
And then the first one, it was like he stiff armed. Second one, he just like spun out of a tackle, and they were both touchdowns.
Well,
so,
yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. I'm not trying to like
Yeah.
sit here and like put Highlands on this ginormous pedestal that no one can touch. But the reality is that's a tough. If you're a defense playing the Highlands this year, that's just a tough task to be able to figure out a defensive strategy or maybe a formation that you can kind of limit their ability to really use best of both worlds under center. Hey, I'm sure Littmer can probably run too, but I mean, why the heck not put Lorenzen in there and just let him go for it? When you're inside 20 yards to the end zone. So we'll have to see how the rest of the season goes. But I'm interested to see how defenses play them the rest of the year.
For sure. Well, do you want to move into the top 25 for this week?
We'll just roll straight on into the top 25. If you have it pulled up, I can add it to the screen. You can kind of take a look at it, talk about any teams we hadn't talked about yet tonight, and then maybe some matchups next week.
Yeah. So here
you've got St. X. Yeah, St. X.
Yeah. So St. X. Touch on that just for a quick second. They did beat Centerville last week, 20-7. Good win for St. X, and the defense for them is still good after 2 weeks. Still a really good defense.
Breaking news. Breaking news.
Good defense. And then you see Greg, I guess, dropped Moeller 1 spot after the loss.
I think it's to be expected.
But didn't drop too far down.
Yeah.
And Lakota West didn't have a really good bounce-back game against Mason. Mason's usually a solid team in the GMC. 35-13 win. They have Hamilton up, Hamilton you can see bounce back. They're 1-1 after losing to Baden. Anderson, you're just on the steamroll again this year in the ECC.
We had talked last week about that West Claremont game. That West Claremont team, by the way, is not a bad football team by any stretch of the imagination. We talked. I briefly touched last week. I thought they were a little bit of a sleeper this year, and I thought the score would be a little closer. But I think Anderson's just got it again, man. They're just.
I mean, yeah, it just speaks to how good Anderson is. I think. I mean, you can see the stat here. 101 points and over 1,000 yards of total offense through two games.
That's
and
crazy.
They're going up against Little Miami, so it'll most likely be more of the same next week for the Raptors. And then so we talked about
Princeton.
Talked about Elder. Princeton, huge win. I think somebody actually in the chat had just said, unfortunately, this extends Colerain's losing streak to 24, I think, the Princeton-Colerain game. So, gotta hope Colerain can get on the board at some point this season. But definitely a good bounce-back game. Defense pitched a shutout beside, can't count a safety towards the shutout, obviously. So good win for Princeton. They have Sycamore next week. Hopefully continue to get their season back on track and get to 2-1. And then, Ryle, like you were kind of talking about, that king of the hill for Kentucky. They beat Connor 44-0. So,
they have it on offense. If I would be interested to see Jacob Savage and Taden Lorenzen do a Oklahoma drill. I want to see how that goes.
I think those are they're banned now, but that would be a lot of fun.
I think you are right. Sorry, I forgot those are banned now.
No,
they weren't when I played.
Some of the stuff we did in Pee Wee was a whole bunch of fun. Bull in the ring, Oklahoma drill, all that stuff. Just giving concussions out at 7.
I used to call that getting my bell rung.
Yeah.
Before I do.
I'm just seeing a little stars. I'll be good, coach.
Right. Yeah.
Highlands 2-0. We talked about them, so we'll keep it moving. Lakota East, I do want to touch on Oak Hill's defense here, even though they lost 14-7.
Yeah, that's confirming.
You can see Lakota East put up 564 total yards of offense against Centerville week 1, and Oak Hill has really stifled that Lakota East offense, and especially the run game. Ryder Hooks had a crazy week 1 and then was kind of bottled up in this game, but testament to East, they still got out of there with a win, found a way to win ugly, play defense. So great win for East, and they're going up against Mason, who's looking to recover next week, starting the year off 0-2. So that could be a possible good matchup. Talked about Kings and Winton Woods. So a little ECC battle there. Talked about Covcath.
Taft was another.
Yeah, 33-27 in OT, and I believe both of these teams are Division 4, and I think they met in the Division 4 final.
Sounds right.
Because I know I watched Taylor Alter last year, and that was a good game. But Alter ended up moving on, and I think they played Taft. I can't remember who won. But Taft getting CJ next week, so they're doing a little GCL co-ed tour right now. Back-to-back weeks playing GCL co-ed.
Playing CJ, yeah.
Yeah, and then, LaSalle out here, 2-0, 31-7, and that was the only touchdown they've allowed.
Sorry, man. I just want to say one thing.
Good.
We have not touched on them yet. I think these 2 first shows, and I don't know his name, but I have been told that LaSalle's quarterback he's young. I think he's a junior, or maybe he's younger, but he's the real deal. So for sure, keep an eye on the Lancers this season. I think they've got a really, really, really solid offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you got East Central here, 2-0, and they beat Harrison in the battle for I-74, I think is what they were calling it. Right there. It's right on the screen. Just didn't read it. But yeah, Harrison 21-20. They beat Harrison 21-20. East Central's always a problem in Indiana. They're always, a good team.
Yes.
Kind of talked about Cooper earlier. Now Baden starting the year 2-0 and beating Dixie Heights 66-21. I think Baden's really a team you need to watch. And what I think they might be Division 3. I can't remember if they're D2 or D3, but Baden's off to a really good start, getting a win against Hamilton and then kind of blowing out Dixie Heights there. And then speaking of Hamilton, kind of bounced back here and got a nice 37-7 win against Sycamore. So, things are on the up, and they got a real test next week playing West. So see what happens with that game. I think that'll be a good game to watch.
For sure, yeah. How about Withrow?
Yeah. And they beat CJ 36-7. Yeah, so that's a good definitely Withrow, Taft, and are they in the same division?
I don't know. I think so. I think, but I could be wrong.
But yeah, those are 2 of those, little bit lower divisions that we really haven't talked about much.
But really talented.
We'll get into it as the season kind of moves on and get some conference standings shaking out. I know some of those smaller conferences don't really get into conference play until about week 5. But yeah, and then Middletown here, 2-0. So back-to-back home wins to start the year, and they got Oak Hills next week. So Middletown looking to start the year off pretty well. And you got Lebanon, who's 2-0 in the ECC, beating Loveland 28-25. So that was a close one, good game. And then we were talking about West Claremont earlier, kind of with Anderson. We still both believe in West Claremont. It's just tough when you play Anderson.
It's hard to play Anderson.
Yeah. So, and then kind of finishing out the list. Do you have anything to add on? No,
I don't think so. I think they just, I want everybody to keep an eye on Taft. I think they're going to be really, really good this year. I think they already are, but my point is I think they're going to be even better than people are expecting.
Yeah.
I think they've got the squad this year because if you recall, they were pretty young last year.
Yeah, they
So
were. They were super
so
young. A
they
lot
were
of
they
freshmen, sophomores,
yeah.
like
So they're bringing back almost everybody as far as I know. So
yeah, because
keep an
didn't
eye
they
out
have
for
like a
Senators.
three-headed monster in their backfield, like a couple
Yeah,
really
they
good
did.
running
And
backs and a quarterback?
two of them
Like,
were brothers, I think. I have to
yeah,
go
yeah,
back and look, but
yeah,
I believe you're right.
yeah,
Yeah, so I think that kind of, wraps up the top 25. I will, we will mention that there's down there Batavia, Clinton, Massey, Indian Hill, McNick, Simon, Kenton, Wyoming. I do know McNick, had a pretty big win over Turpin week one. Had a tough loss last week, this
yeah,
past weekend to, Greensboro or not Greensboro, somebody not that you wouldn't, know, but
yeah.
Wheelersburg, I think
Uh,
maybe they were called. It's just down there. It's
yes,
on the
Wheelersburg, Ohio. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on the
Ten to
scroll
seven,
down
they
there. Yeah,
lost,
tough
but
loss,
yeah.
but I think they're going to be solid in the co-ed GCL division.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's probably pretty much going to wrap us up, isn't it? I think
Yeah, I believe
there's
so.
a football game on here in a little bit. That's the return of Bill Belichick.
Yeah,
And then we've got some fantasy going on, and hey, like we talked about next week, NFL starts, so we'll try to keep it under, an hour for everybody, so we're not keeping anybody
yeah.
away from there. Monday Night Football. The goal is 30 minutes. We've gone to 41 again, but me and Jacob just like talking to everybody.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
so that's going to pretty much wrap it up for us here tonight. Be sure, as always, to check out all of our content on Tri-State Football social medias, Twitter, so not Twitter anymore. I'm always going to
Yeah,
call it Twitter.
I am
X,
too. There's nothing I can
Facebook,
do about it.
Instagram. You can catch our live stream on Twitch when it's live. You can catch us on YouTube. Of course, all podcast streaming platforms have this as well. You're looking at Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, etc. And then of course be sure to check out our awesome new website. It looks great.
It's an awesome website.
Yes, it is for our 20th
Yeah,
season.
yeah.
Is there any? I think that's everything, Jacob. I think we're good to
Yeah.
say goodnight. And well, that sounds good to
Everybody
us.
enjoy the rest of your Labor Day.
Yeah, absolutely. Enjoy the holiday. Enjoy the rest of your week, everybody. We will be back
Yeah.
again at Monday night. I know we said we're can't talk. Supposedly supposed to be end up starting at 8 p.m. But since the holiday, we started a little early tonight. We'll be
Yeah.
back to our normal 8 p.m. next week. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your evening. See you guys.
Yes. See you.